So before each game footage, I'm gonna go over the opposing team's team composition and what I think about their team, and then also how I customize my first game's lineup to combat their strengths and weaknesses. When I look at Wolfang's team, I get the impression that he has really thought long and hard about the Twilight metagame. He has two Toxicroak counters, a Steel type that can resist poison types, and a Muck that can take care of popular water types like Azumarill, Coefficient Tentacle, as well as the bats. He also has good bulk in Dusknoir and the Twilight staple Toxicroak in his lineup. Some thoughts I had going into our first match is that Wolfang would likely be using at least one of Mawile or Dusknoir as a really seen pick to throw me off. This can be a good idea as less popular Pokemon can have movesets that result in either suboptimal shield usage or big damage. To combat these two threats, I felt that Skuntank would be a good idea as I have Crunch on the Skuntank to hit Dusknoir with multiple super effective charge moves, and Flamethrower to hit Mawile with super effective damage. I also elected to bring in Venomoth because half of Wolfang's lineup was weak to Confusion. Although Ninetales could perform similarly well but had more weaknesses in poison types than did Venomoth, which only had Golbat's wing attack to fear. Finally, I decided to lead with Toxicroak because I practiced with Toxicroak leads so much in the past. So we start off with Wolfang using Mawile, and I had the Toxicroak lead, which gave me a slight advantage in that I had a super effective Mud Bomb, which would come out in spurts quickly because of counter, being a high EPS move. And so we see here that I get a Mud Bomb off. And we're going to actually end up burning through both of his shields because of Mud Bomb. So he's going to use actually a move that I had no idea what it was. I was expecting maybe Vice Grip because I knew Mawile had Vice Grip and that would be a fast move to maybe bait shields. Turns out it was actually an Iron Head, so that did a lot of damage to me. And I don't actually get off the second Mud Bomb. So going to the switch, I thought I would maybe use the Skuntank because I have Flamethrower if needed, but also just wanted to start charging a move on it. And for Venomoth, charging its moves aren't really that useful because both of its charge moves aren't going to do that much damage because Poison Fang is a low power move and Silver Wind is just not very good coverage. And so here we're going to switch to Venomoth and we're going to hit him with a lot of confusions. He's going to hit me with a Mud Bomb, and I like not to protect because I wasn't sure what the last Pokemon was, and Mud Bomb does neutral damage. Surprised he doesn't switch, even though it was a bad matchup, and he had the switch that he could use. In this case, he could have switched into Golbat, and it would have been a more toss-up matchup, in that both sides would be doing neutral damage with the fast move. So here, my charge moves, as I said, don't really do much to him, because they're both resisted, at least partially, if not doubly. And we're going to put in the Skuntank, and instant attack, I protect it, because he has one Pokemon left, and I can afford to do it on this Pokemon. You don't get points for saving your shields on your last Pokemon, so may as well use it. And we're going to kill him with a Crunch. And yeah, that's the first game. It's also useful to note that the Crunch actually helped from being charged up earlier before I switched out. For the second game, I predicted that Wolfang would use something that would be a better counter for Toxicroak since I led with it and it had brought me decent success. So I was assuming he would bring Golbat as a lead, and in that case I was going to bring a Skuntank, which would be a decent counter to Golbat, and it would only be weak to Toxicroak. And if he did bring in Toxicroak, then I was going to bring in Venomoth with a lone Ninetales actually behind the Skuntank, so that I would have two counters ready in case I did make that mistake. So as we can see, I was actually incorrect about both my predictions. He burned the Muck as his lead. And so this is actually a decent matchup for Skuntank because we both have resisted fast attacks, but our charge moves has Stab, Crunch on my Skuntank, while Muck has the Thunder Punch, which is not Stab and is inherently not a very high power move, but it does have the potential to break shields. So my philosophy here was to not break my shields and to just let him damage me, which is not going to hurt that much actually. So at this point, I'm actually trying to charge up my charge move and then get the switch onto the Venomoth to one-hit KO him. So once I got my Flamethrower, I switched into Venomoth, and my Confusion just got rid of him with super effective damage. So then he brings in a Mawile, which is going to resist both my moves, especially Silver Wind. Poison Fang is actually only resisted once, despite its immunity because of Pokemon Go's mechanics, where the Fairy type is weak to the Poison type, so it's actually going to be only one time resisted. So it still does some damage, and it's fast. I decided not to use shield here, and then keep damaging him. I figured that I couldn't do that much damage to Maul, so it'd honestly be in my favor to just get rid of the Venomoth as quickly as possible and use something else to take care of it. So I actually killed the Maul first, and so here I'm just guessing which move is better because I only have one slight bit of HP left. In this case, both moves would have done very little because Golbat resists both moves, but Poison Fang is so weak against Golbat that it's really not going to do much more than a Silver Wind, which is double resisted. So I sent in the Ninetales here because I want to get rid of his shields. At this point, it doesn't really matter which one of the two I have left out against this Golbat. It's a 2v1, and he just got rid of my last shield, and he's already gone with his shields. So I'm going to use the Psyshock. Sorry, he actually has some shields left, but at this point, I'm trying to break his shield with the Psyshock. I know it's going to be pretty good at breaking shields because Powder Snow is such a good energy per second move. It just charges the Psyshock so quickly, and Psyshock doesn't need much energy either, and it's super effective, so he's definitely going to shield. So I'm going to use up both of his shields, sorry, with the Ninetales. So at this point, I'm going to let him kill me, it's fine. And then I have the Skuntank that I charged the Crunch on earlier, and that should do the trick. I'm just going to instant use it in case he has extra juice left. Don't want to risk anything. He did just also kill me, so I had a pretty good shot at getting the first charge with that. An interesting to note about our last game is that neither of us used Toxicroak. For me, I didn't use Toxicroak just because I didn't need to use ground types, ground moves. I could use Psychic just as well because his Muck was Canton on Alolan, so there were actually no Poison Darks to worry about. And ground moves are really good against Poison Darks because that's the only super effective damage you can give, while Psychic has the weakness in terms of not covering Dark. But in this case, Psychic moves were really safe. The only thing that resisted it was Mawile. On his part, I'm a little unsure why he didn't use Toxicroak because 4 of my Pokemon were weak to ground moves in Tentacool, Skuntank, Alolan and Toxicroak. So I think sometimes when you play, the metagame does matter a lot because it has been shown to have good results. And while I think thinking ahead of the metagame can be important so that you have the upper hand, it's also important to still keep the metagame kind of in your main pocket and not to think too far ahead of it. So next we have Rise, and his team is actually pretty different in that he has 2 Poison Darks, and that is going to be very good coverage against most of the field, except for Pokemon with ground types. He also has a Azumarill, which is a very hefty Stardust investment, so I figured he would probably use that at some point during this match. And he also has the Frenzy Plant Venusaur, I assumed. Frenzy Plant is really good for just spamming attacks really quickly. Even against single poison types, it still does a good amount of damage, and it's going to break shields, if not that. So, definitely a good pick. And then he has 1 Toxicroak counter, which is also different from the last team, in that the last team had 2 Toxicroak counters. So, when I'm thinking about what team I'm going to send, I definitely will think about sending in Tentacruel because of Azumarill. My hypothesis is that every Azumarill owner is going to try to use it, like maybe the first game, because they've invested it so much. So, in my first game, I definitely ended with a Tentacruel. And then, in terms of which Toxicroak counter to use, I decided to go with Venomoth because I wanted also something that could damage Azumarill. And all Ninetales can damage Azumarill, but it's got no super effective moves. One of its moves is resisted because I have Ice Beam. And so Venomoth just seemed like the better choice. Finally, I used Toxicroak because he has 2 Poison Dark Pokemon, and then Toxicroak is also weak to Toxicroak, so, you know, I figured it'd be good against half the field, as well as a Sludge Bomb against the Azumarill would be good, so, yeah, that was my thoughts on this team initially. So he decides to open with the Skuntank, and I have Toxicroak, which is going to be in my favor. This is from Rise's point of view, FYI. My footage wasn't great for his sets. For the first game, I didn't record it. And then the third game, I got a phone call in the middle, so it was kind of awkward. He switches into a Venomoth, just going to take... Well, he's going to shield it, actually. I'm going to scram, because confusion hurts. And I put in my Venomoth, and basically it comes down to who has lower health at that point. And his his Venomoth is gonna have lower health first, apparently. That's partially why I put up the shield, so that I'd have that momentum advantage. So I'm gonna launch a Poison Fang, and he's gonna block it because he's scared of a Silver Wind. And so he's gonna actually use a Crunch against a Toxicroak. Probably could have threatened with a different move there, but either way, I'm gonna get the Mud Ball on him. And then following that, he's down to one Pokemon. I have two. I'll probably launch a Mud Palm in time. No, he's gonna get a Frenzy Plant. See, Frenzy Plant is such a good move. It goes so quickly, and honestly, it's even good against Poison types with how strong of a move it is and how weak some Poison types are, like Toxicroak. There's a Bulk. He's gonna get in a Frenzy Plant, which is gonna do major damage, but I'm gonna get it off the Sludge Wave first. It looks like. Yeah. At that point, it's just a waiting game. Without shield, Tentacruel is just really deadly. So for that lineup, he actually didn't use a Azumarill. So that Tentacruel was low-key not super useful, but Tentacruel has always been a decent finisher. Well, a great finisher, so it worked out for that game. For game 2, I thought he might use a Toxicroak counter, and in return I thought I would start with a Skuntank to counter that counter, but it turns out I probably thought too hard. He decided to use a Toxicroak, which is good against my team. I have a lot of weaknesses to Toxicroak. So he starts off with a favorable matchup. I get a few fast moves off to charge some of the Skuntank, and so I put in a Venomoth to give some damage, but he quickly enough switches into a Azumarill, which is probably the slowest to get damaged by this Venomoth, because his Venomoth is going to also take strong damage from Venomoth of mine in Confusion. So I guess he's just thinking that I don't have Poison Fang, but in reality I do, and I'm going to knock out both of his shields before I let myself die. And that's going to help me down the road, because now I have a shield advantage, and in this case I'm going to let him kill me so that I can get equal footing on the next Pokemon I have. He's not going to have residual damage built up for his charge move. I'm going to put in Amok, which is going to be good because my fast move allows me to generate damage on him while I'm accumulating energy for my charge moves, but I don't have to use my charge moves. And at this point, I probably need to save some charge moves to get back into the game since I'm behind so much due to that bad start. He's going to put in the Venomoth, which is a little bit curious. I probably would have put in the Toxicroak just to get the Mud Bomb off, but either way, I put in the Skuntank. He's going to get a Silver Wind off. Again, I'm just shooting to save the shield because I don't think Silver Wind's going to kill me with over half my health left. I have already built up energy because of my first interaction with the Toxicroak, and I've just built up enough for a Flamethrower, which is super effective. Gets rid of him. The Toxicroak comes in, it's going to kill me. But then his Mud Bomb isn't really going to work because I have my little Muck that has a shield. So the shield that I saved comes in really clutch here. And because I had my my Amok on the Azumarill, I have a Sludge Wave charged, and that's actually gonna beat him. So, moral of the story: sometimes you gotta save your shields up. It'll help long term if you're behind. So going to game 3, which is the beginning of our second set, since we got paired together again with the Sofrina pairing algorithm, we both were kind of not sure what to lead with. I'm guessing for Rise, he wanted to try a third different lead since he wanted a different result, and for me, I like to just go with Toxicroak again, just because I'm really used to Toxicroak lead. And then to go with that Toxicroak, I decided to use a little Ninetales, and then also a little Muck, just because those are pretty reliable options for me. And then we get started. As you can see, he decides to try out the Frenzy Plant Venusaur, which is going to be a really fast way to knock down shields. Although Toxicroak does resist Frenzy Plant is such a good move, and Toxicroak is so flimsy that one Frenzy Plant hit is going to hurt a lot. So we're going to see, like, during this exchange, we're just going to trade our charge attacks back and forth. me with Mud Bomb, which is going to do decent neutral damage against Venusaur, so he's going to shield it, and he's going to use his Frenzy Plant against my Toxic Croak, because it's also going to do damage against me. As you can see, we both use our 2 shields in this exchange. And then, based on how the first 2 went, I was going to be losing this mirror match in terms of who gets to use the charge move first. Which is fine, because I get to actually charge up some energy for my Alolan Ninetales, which is sitting with the second Pokemon. And so the Venusaur just has just the right amount of energy, HP left, where I can charge my Powder Snow a little bit, charge my charge attacks with Powder Snow. And so once he puts in his next Pokemon, both are actually weak to Psyshock. That was something about his team that can be washed out for next time, just not having triple weak to Psyshock. Here my phone got a call, so we had a weird pause. But yeah, after that, we roll in with the Psyshock. He's out of shield, so that's going to take him out. And then his next Pokemon is also weak to Psyshock. He does have Poison Fang, which is good coverage, but I get the Psyshock in a little faster, just because it's just a faster charging move in Powder Snow. He's going to get off the Poison Fang, but then my next Pokemon is going to be fine against this Venomoth, since it resists Confusion. So that's the first game of the second set. So for the second set, he's going to go back to a Skuntank lead. I'm guessing he anticipated that I would switch out my Toxicroak lead, since that's exactly what I did in the second game of the second set. So we see here, he starts with a Skuntank, which is going to be in a tough pickle against the Toxicroak. So he switches out into a Azumarill. And for me, I decided to stay in, since I have Sludge Bomb, and that's going to be fairly quick to charge against Azumarill. Azumarill doesn't charge her charge attacks that quickly, so I decided to just knock down the shields first with Sludge Bomb. So I'm going to shield this Ice Beam, obviously, because that's major damage. And then we just go back and forth for a little bit. Once I get off this Mud Bomb, I think about switching to another Pokemon to just take the hit on the Play Rough with Ice Beam, because I want to save my shield a little bit. So I switched into a Alolan Ninetales. I had the option of either Alolan Ninetales or Alolan Muck, actually. Sorry, not Alolan Muck, Tentacruel. But I guess I just wanted to stomach the possible Ice Beam, but really, this was not my best choice. I could have totally switched into Tentacruel, because I was losing my Toxicroak counter this way by throwing out Ninetales recklessly like this. So this could have actually been a really poor decision. Luckily, as we could see from the opening tip, he didn't bring in Toxicroak, so it worked out fine. Here I'm going to actually take advantage of the fact with my Tentacruel that he's probably not going to do much damage to me, and I'm going to charge up a pretty big charge move there. And he has no shields up, so it's going to do major damage to whoever he brings in. I got a little lucky that the Play Rough didn't go off. And so here, our phones both lagged, and eventually they started working again. I'm going to hope none of us really got shafted by this in-game glitch. But I get off the Sludge Wave. It was already pretty much charged. And then he's going to hit me with the Frenzy Plant. I decided, sure, I'm going to take it just because I already did major damage with the Tentacruel. So its job is done. It's not going to really get off another charge move, most likely. And I have 2 Pokemon left, so I knew it was a Skuntank, and I knew I had the Toxicroak left because of my switch earlier. So I just let it fly. I had a shield left too, so realistically, the Skuntank wasn't going to kill me. As I said earlier, if you have a shield left, you don't get points for not using it, so just use it, obviously, to protect yourself. Gets Crunch off, and I'm going to Mud Bomb him to death here. So that's game 2 of set 2. Yep. So our tournament was kind of short. It was 3 rounds, so Leah Biker and I decided to play an extra game just for fun. Leah Biker is one of the hosts for this tournament, so thought I'd have some fun with him. He's also invited me to these tournaments twice, but has never battled me, so I thought I'd give it a shot. Looking at his team, he has a pretty balanced team. He has the 1 Toxicroak, he has 2 Toxicroak counters, he has a Poison Dark type, He has a TDO monster and Azumarill, and then he has Muck, which can be coverage for your water types and your flying types. So looking at it, I decided to just go with kind of one of my default lineups, which is going to be Toxicroak and Little Ninetales. And I'm also going to throw in the Tentacruel. I used the Little Ninetales instead of Venomoth just because he did have a Poison Dark type, so I thought I'd try it out first. And then for Tentacruel, I used that instead of a Lone Muck as my finisher because he had the Azumarill, so I thought it might be coming in useful. So we open and he actually starts with a Lone Muck, which is, again, not a great matchup for Toxicroak. So he's going to switch up pretty quickly to not get Mud Bombed. And then he brings in his counter, which is going to knock out a good amount of my health on the Toxicroak. I bring in my Little Ninetales, which is going to do Side Shock damage to him. And my Side Shock is going to actually charge faster than Venomoth's Poison Fangs. But in this case, he actually didn't have Poison Fang. So, word of note, for Venomoth, you optimally might want to get a Legacy Poison Fang Venomoth in the Twilight Cup, just because Poison Fang helps threaten against opposing Pokemon that are weak to poison, such as Azumarill or Little Ninetales. And then Psychic isn't that great of a charge move in this case because chances are, if you're going up against another Pokemon weak to Psychic type moves, your Confusion is going to do a lot of damage anyway, and you can finish him off with like a Poison Fang or a Silver Wind, etc. So Psychic, not the greatest move in this situation. Poison Fang is great coverage, although it's not a very hard-hitting move. So we trade shields, and we're both down to 0 shields. He's gonna put in Azumarill, gonna knock out some of his health with Side Shock, and at this point, he's getting a little bit concerned that I'm gonna keep knocking out his health with Side Shock, so he actually elects to use a charge attack here. I'm okay with that. I was actually not gonna get off a Side Shock in time anyway, and so he loses some of his advantage by charging up a charge move. He could have just not launched it and bet on that I wouldn't be able to get off another Side Shock because I had so little health left. So here he's trapped against my Tentacruel because he was the second person to switch. And he was the first person to switch, sorry. And so I get to just kind of accumulate some charge on my charge moves. So at this point, I have pretty good options. I know he has a Muck in the back, so I use Hydro Pump. And that's going to knock out over 3/4 of his health. And he's probably going to knock me out here. Yeah, pretty close to knock me out on the Tentacruel, but I do have one more Pokemon left, so ends up fine for me. Yeah, last game. And we only did one game, just because everyone had to go back to work pretty soon after that. But yeah, GG's all around. So, just some closing thoughts before this ends. I think overall, today was definitely another confirmation of certain things in PvP that have been popular points of, I guess, principles to win. First off, have a good lead. You know, a lead will determine if you win a good amount of the time. Something that charges quickly and fires off threatening moves is always going to help. In this case, Toxicroak worked pretty well for me because only Toxicroak counters were a problem. And then, however, if you open against a Toxicroak and you're in the wrong spot, you definitely still have chances to win, as one of my games showed. And I also believe that if you have Toxicroak against a Toxicroak counter to open, you still have the possibility to win based on some of my practice rounds earlier. So knowing when to switch and knowing when to charge before you switch is also really important because that can help save your team later on. In terms of team building, definitely want to not leave out any category that you really need, such as, well, definitely you need Toxicroak to threaten your poison types, your poison dark types. You're going to need the poison dark types to really threaten the psychic users. And then you're going to need the Toxicroak counters to threaten Toxicroak, or else they're just going to run rampant on your poison types, which are going to be really popular. I think today, from what I saw, I feel like Azumarill isn't a great option. I'm sure some teams can be constructed with Azumarill to perform really well, but it takes a lot of work for that. I was somewhat easily able to deal with Azumarill today because of my Tentacruel and other poison types. My team is literally 5-6 poison types, so you know it's gonna be tough to make a hole in that type of team. You need to know when not to use certain Pokemon. Just because you powered something up doesn't mean you have to use it, even if it took a lot of Stardust. You need to know when to not use something. Like certain matchups, I knew when not to use Tentacruel, I knew when not to use a little Ninetales because they would get crushed by certain matchups. So that's really important. And yeah, just being flexible, playing in practice rounds really helps you figure out what switches can be helpful, and that helps you know how to switch quickly. Because the more you sit and wait and think about what to switch into, the more you're sustaining bad damage more likely. So just practicing more against people is really helpful. Like today was actually just basically a practice round because there were 6 people, so it was in a ranked tournament, so that worked out really well for me. I recommend doing that with a lot of friends. It's really great. So yeah, obviously thank you to Downtown for having me today. It was great meeting Wolfgang and Leah Biker again, and also some new folks, including Rise from Tomble. Long commute. But yeah, so that's it. That's my recap of the weekday Downtown Houston Twilight Cup. Hope you enjoyed.